So with it being the dead of winter still and not a whole lot going on, still odds and ends fixing stuff up, I thought I'd make a video kind of about the history of our farm and how we got into it. So about 7 years ago, we moved to this farm that we're at now. There's 50 some acres here. It's just kind of a small farm. And my grandparents had owned the property before us, and what they actually did, they ended up fencing in couple acres here, 2 pastures, and the rest of the farmland they rented out to a farmer. Big reason they fenced it in is they just wanted to be able to raise their own beef, and so they started raising 1 or 2 head a year. When we moved here 7-8 years ago, we took the existing fencing and structure down here, kind of just a run-in, started raising our own cattle. We started with, you know, four head a year, and that's kind of what we've been sticking to, 4, 5, 6 head a year, depending on just kind of depends on the year, but that's what we do. Currently we have 4. So that's what we did for 6 or so years, 6, 7 years. Been raising steers kind of just as a hobby, a little bit extra money to pay for taxes and, you know, that sort of thing. Gave us something to do. And we just enjoyed raising the animals. So the more we got into raising steers, the more we kind of invested in the facilities. Originally, this structure here was just this. It was just a little running barn for equipment, a tractor or 2, just some odds and ends. We ended up adding this part of the structure over here. So my papa had an old Massey Ferguson tractor, hooked it up to a post hole digger, and we started digging holes, set the posts, and we extended this structure out, what is that, another 20, 30 feet. Big reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to create more hay storage and a better run in for the steers. Originally, it was just the added structure, and that was really about it. There was no fencing or gates or chute or anything like that. It was just the structure. Maybe some boards there. We had, you know, we kept that an open bay. Just had a 2x6 across there, and that's how we fed steers. But like I said, as we got into it more and more, we invested more and more in the facility. So what we ended up doing is we dug some more holes and we built a chute so that we could load the cattle up into a trailer, make it a lot more simple process. Bought a used headlock, a preferred headlock, put that on there. So now we can kind of control what we do. We can put them in there, band steers, whatever we got to do. Give them vaccines or medicines, whatever we got to do. We don't use it a whole lot because we're just doing feeders. We're not a cow-calf operation. We used to be cow-calf. For what we wanted to do, cow-calf just didn't make sense for us. We had a heifer one time that just gave us so many problems. Gave birth to a stillborn calf, and in the process of doing that, she ended up pinching a nerve in her foot, and she ended up getting stuck in the creek, and it was a whole fiasco. And we were like, you know, we don't have the time or just the resources to be able to deal with sick cows and sick heifers and sick calves and that sort of thing, and it just makes more sense for us to buy in 400 or 500 pound feeders and grass feed them up to 900 to 1,000 pounds. That's what made sense for us. Last winter we bought a head gate there for feeding. We used to have a wooden head gate that was falling apart because wood just falls apart. Cool story about that one. That is actually from my grandpa's farm. My grandpa built a dairy facility back in 2013, and then they ended up leaving because of cancer. But the guy who bought that farm ended up selling out the dairy, and he's doing sheep. He converted the whole freestall barn, and this was from the freestall barn we bought, and so we bought a section of it. Fits perfectly in our little makeshift shack here. So we got like 22 acres of tillable ground here, something like that, 20 some acres. And while we were raising steers, we rented out 17 of the acres to a farmer, had an income from that, and then there was like a 4.5 more acres of hay ground that we had a farmer come in and make hay on, and we did a 50-50 split. He took 50% of it, and we kept the other 50% for our steers, and then all the inputs we split 50-50. Now, that leads us to this barn. So as we raised all these steers, my love for farming grew and grew and grew and grew. I ended up working for a couple farmers. I milked cows, I worked for a custom guy, I worked for a harvest crew, did a whole bunch of stuff. Did a little bit of stuff for a couple local farmers, stacking hay and that sort of thing. I even still work for one of those farmers. It's actually the farmer that used to farm our ground, so I work for him, harvest, and I do some odds and ends for him throughout the year. So we came to an agreement. My dad was like, we've got the ground and you've got the time and the experience. Let's do this thing. So we started making hay. So in the fall of 2021, that's when we decided we were going to start looking for equipment. That was the last year we rented out the ground to the farmer, and that was kind of like the starting point, like, hey, let's start making this thing official. So we started looking for equipment. First thing we bought was our disc bind over here, back there. Then we bought the tedder and the rake the same day at the same place. This tractor here was my grandpa's tractor back when he used to dairy farm years and years ago. He would use this tractor a lot, and he kept it in his garage, and then he gave it to me. So I got this tractor actually in 2020. That was before we started, doing a bunch of farming. But this was kind of like, hey, I plan on farming someday. So we had this tractor and we had the Agco, because the Agco was my pup-ups tractor. So that was kind of our first 2 tractors. And then we ended up buying this tractor here this past, about a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago, we bought this tractor. It's a 966 International, Been nothing but problems to us, but we're trying to still work out the kinks. And then of course we bought a baler because you kind of need a baler to make bales, right? And we got hay wagons out here too and that sort of thing, but they're just hay wagons, they're nothing special. So we bought all that equipment between December of 2021 and February of 2022. This tractor, we got a story on that, but I'll touch on that in a second. As far as the fields, what we ended up doing is there's 2 fields here, there's 8 acres between the 2. We planted them in an alfalfa grass mix. So there's a good bit of grass and alfalfa in here. And then that field over there, there's 10 acres over there. That's kind of our crop, cash crop field. We put that in soybeans. I planted them and then took the soybeans off this past fall and then planted wheat in there. We will take the wheat off midsummer, plant late beans in there, and that'll be kind of our crop for the year. Someday this will probably all be hay, probably. But we like to have that cash crop as, you know, a different form of income. Trying to diversify our incomes is good. We've got the hay, we've got the beef, we've got those cash crops. And because we bought all this equipment now, we do a little bit of custom work for neighbors. There's 3 neighbors that I do some custom work for. The income from that will pay for parts and maintenance and that sort of thing for this equipment. It's not a huge money maker unless you're doing it on a larger scale, but it does help and gives me something to do. Now I said I'd talk about this tractor. This is a 1975 IH 966. It showed up the day we mowed first cutting hay. We bought it in February, but we wanted a canopy put on it. But of course, with our current economic climate, it was an absolute pain in the butt to get that thing ordered, shipped, and put on the tractor. So it didn't come until the day we mowed first cutting hay. That was only the start of our problems. It has been nothing but problems since the day it showed up. We were having problems with the hydraulics. We had to run to the hydraulic store, get adapters for the thingamabobs, and we were like, okay, good, we're ready to go. Hooked up to the disc line, still wasn't working. We're like, what the heck's going on? Well, you know what happened? It was 12 gallons low of hydraulic fluid. Literally, it only had half a tank of hydraulic fluid in there. Only half the reservoir was full. So that was the first problem. And it has just been problems ever since. Had fuel problems, fuel line was plugged, so we got that fixed. We got the line blown out. Then it came back, and then it had another problem again. The fuel lines were plugged again, so then we got them blown, and then we got the tank taken off, cleaned off. It had steering wheel problems, and it was leaking everywhere. We had having radiator problems, new coolant filter, new alternator, flushed the radiator, did all that coolant junk, you know, the whole shebang. Let's go over to this side. What happened over here? Oh, my dipstick was like a piece of junk. My radiator cap was a piece of junk. My water pump went out, so we had to replace that literally the day I was about to bale some hay. That was a problem. This past winter, this thing was just sitting here and you know, just sat for a couple weeks and came out and went up, started up, and it wasn't working right. So had no hydraulic function, power steering, didn't have nothing. So I ended up having to change all the hydraulic fluid in the filter. Thankfully, that was the problem. And thought I fixed it. And then a couple weeks ago, came up here and the clutch booster is leaking. And now I got an axle seal leaking on that side. I'm pretty sure I didn't even touch all the problems that this tractor has had, but that is just the ones that came to mind. Tractor's been nothing but problems. I love the tractor. It's a super cool tractor, but it's been nothing but problems. This tractor over here, been a great tractor. The IH has got 5,400 hours on it. Not super high for that tractor. This tractor has got, well, the tax says 2,800, but it has not worked for years. So who knows how many hours is on it. It was a dairy tractor, so we all know about dairy tractors. We put about $2,000 into it, and it's been running like a champ. This tractor, we've put, I don't know how many grand into it, and it's still giving me problems. Anyway, so that's about how I came to be a farmer, and I love it. It is a stressful job, but it's worth it. I really enjoy it. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to watch, like I said, the rewind, click down below, or you can go back and just watch all my videos from the 2022 season. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.